Good evening. Good evening. Thank you, everyone, for joining us on tonight. We are live tonight for Bougie Girl Cyber Happy Hour. So, good evening, happy Friday, happy Juneteenth. We are celebrating the emancipation of freed slaves. And so, we are just thankful for this opportunity in this day to be on live on Juneteenth 2020. So, what a blessing it is to be Black and in America, right? I'm very thankful to be here on this platform. We are super grateful for our audience tonight. We thank you so much for joining us. We love you all. We hope all is safe. So please share, please comment and join us as we talk to a great friend of Bougie Girl Cyber Happy Hour. Her name is Gia, and she's going to discuss tonight with our audience about overcoming addictions in her life. She's going to tell her story. So if you have comments or questions, and if you know anyone who has struggled with any type of addiction, you may want to watch this on tonight because it's going to be a very powerful and impactful story that we're going to hear on her story on tonight on Bougie Girl Cyber Happy Hour. So again, happy Friday, happy Juneteenth. And so let's welcome Gia on the platform this evening. Hi, Gia. How are you doing?
Hello.
Hi.
I'm
How are
blessed. How
you
are
doing
you?
today? I'm awesome. Thank you. So thank you so much again for coming on tonight. Good. Thank you so much for coming on tonight on Bougie Girl Cyber Happy Hour. So we're going to talk to you tonight about your story. We want you to share your story with us. I mean, you're good friends with Elena, and I've come to know you as well. And you have such a powerful testimony about overcoming addiction. So we want you to share that with our audience. So first of all, just kind of give us a little background of your childhood and growing up, and just give us a little background about who you are as Gia.
Okay, well, thank you for having me. So first of all, I'd like to say I'm blessed and I'm grateful to be here. As a child, um, if I think back, my childhood was filled with more bad memories than good memories.
Hmm.
I was raised predominantly in a white neighborhood, so
Hmm.
there was no one that looked like me besides my family or maybe some visitors that would come around.
Hmm.
Um, and mostly my childhood was filled with abandonment and the constant need of approval from my father.
Hmm. Hmm.
Because my father, as I know now, it was an alcoholic, and so he wasn't able to give me what I needed as a child. I saw many situations of my father beating my mother, many situations of domestic abuse between my parents and
Hmm.
my siblings. I saw a lot of hurt and abuse against my siblings as well. And even though I understand that my parents did the best that they could as parents, it's still hurtful to know that that was my childhood.
Sure. Right. And so basically you grew up in a tumultuous childhood where you were around violence and domestic disturbances and just being around people that a majority of the people around you didn't look like you. So how did that impact you as far as your self-esteem or just knowing, just about who you are as a young Black girl?
Well, for me, it definitely impacted my self-esteem where I didn't feel good enough or I didn't feel I didn't feel a part of the community that I grew up in, even from being a child all the way up to when I left Maine. I felt like it was I was always going to be the outsider and I would never really be accepted for who I am. And so that's what I believe led me down the road that I went because it was easier to mask feeling not a part of something than to actually have to feel not being a part of something. It made me feel like just a nobody, basically.
Hmm. Hmm. And I'm sure as a young brown girl, growing up in Maine, just being around people who didn't look like you, but then in your own home where all you see is people that look like you were surrounded by violence. You were surrounded by, like you said, you didn't have a lot of happy memories. So, at what age did you leave the Maine area? What age did you leave? G, are you still there? Okay. Well, hopefully.
Oh, there. Okay.
Okay, good.
Okay. Okay. Sorry.
No problem. I'm glad you're back. So I was asking, I know you were saying that you grew up in this town in Maine where you didn't have people that looked like you except for your own family. But then when you were around your family, you were surrounded by violence. So you're
Yeah.
associating your family or maybe people in your family or people that look like you with not so happy memories. When did you leave Maine? At what age?
So I decided, since I was raised a Jehovah's Witness, I had to stay home until I was 18, of course. That would have been the best decision for me at the time. So I
Mhm.
left at the age of 18 because I decided I no longer wanted to be a part of the religion.
Mhm. Mhm.
And so I left Maine probably at the age of 21. And that
Mhm.
was after I had met my children's father. And
Okay.
he was my way out. That's what I
Mhm.
thought of, that he was my way out, and that um, a boy or something. He gave me the affection I was looking for. That's basically what it was. And now that I
Right.
look back on it, he gave me what I thought I needed, and I craved it, and I was willing to accept anything else,
Right.
everything that came with that. But I eventually left Maine in 2004.
Mhm.
I came down to Virginia with him and his family.
Mhm.
And on the way down, when I got there, we found out that I was pregnant with my first son.
Okay. So you left Maine with your so you all got married during this time or
We weren't married yet, but we were
okay.
together. Yeah.
So you left Maine with your boyfriend and you came to
Yeah.
Virginia. So what was that experience like for you? You're changing. I mean, I'm sure it was like a culture shock. It seems like from Maine to Virginia. How was that transition for you?
If I talk about it, I get emotional about it. And so it was
Mhm.
scary because
Mhm.
I left a place that I knew, that I
Right.
didn't like, but I knew because that was the only thing that was familiar to having no one in
Right.
Virginia.
Mhm.
And the
Mhm.
only person that I had was my now ex-husband. And
Mhm.
it was scary. I didn't have anybody. And back
Mhm.
then they didn't really have cell phones that well then at that time. So
Right.
they had it, but it wasn't like I didn't have a way to talk to my parents or anything because they had disowned me.
Okay.
So I didn't have, it was scary. I clung to this person because that's
Mhm.
all I had.
Right. Because you said your family disowned you. Did they disown you because you left the faith, or did they disown you because you left with this person, or?
For both.
Hmm.
For
Hmm.
both.
So they didn't approve of him.
No.
So tell us about your journey then. So you left and you're in Maine. You're pregnant. You're with this your your future husband. Tell us about that experience, or tell us what's going on here. Tell us what's going on in your story with this.
No. So I left Maine and I went to Virginia with him. The
Hmm.
first couple months, it seemed to be working out. We
Hmm.
were thinking about moving it out into we lived with his parents at the time. This is what happens. And
Hmm.
so living with in-laws is very difficult,
Right.
especially being the minority, I guess is the word for it. And it was very
Hmm.
difficult because they're sorry, I have to not say so many names.
Yeah.
So he started using a little bit more than he was. When we
Mhm.
first moved to Virginia, he was slowly coming off what he was addicted to. And so we were
Mhm.
trying to, get right. I hadn't been using at the time. The
Okay.
most I would have done was drink, but I was pregnant at the time. And so
Mhm.
we got down there 6 months. We were doing very well, a good job. We were getting ourselves together. And all of a sudden, somebody that was very close to him showed him were to go purchase drugs, and it
Mhm.
went downhill from there.
Mm.
And it had been a constant battle until the day that we divorced, which is 3 years ago. But I started using drugs when I was about 22, 20 years, 22 is when it got really bad. I may have used it recreationally, but 22 is when it started getting really bad. And I believe that everything happened the way it did because I was so sheltered and I didn't have the exposure to the social world
Mhm.
and for reality. So I didn't know what I was walking into. I was incredibly vulnerable if I look back on it. And
Mhm.
I was just what they call wide open.
Right.
because
Hmm.
I didn't know what was right or wrong. I didn't know who was fake or not fake. I didn't know who really had my best interests at heart.
Right.
So I'm here in Virginia by myself with a man that says that he loves me, but he's
Hmm.
getting high, and I'm sitting here and I'm hungry because I'm pregnant,
Right.
and I don't know what to do, and I'm sitting in a place where I shouldn't be sitting
Right.
without going into detail. And I was
Right.
sitting there for months, and while he was doing, I was stuck. And so
Hmm.
eventually I called my in-laws and I said, I need, can you come get me? Because I didn't know who else to call.
Right.
And that has been the situation back and forth with all my kids. It's like I would always be calling them for, and eventually people do get fed up
Hmm.
with you using and saying, I'm sorry, I'm not going to do it again. But like it, throughout the period of my marriage and the drug use and everything just fell to pieces.
Hmm.
The final part of my journey is what I'll probably talk about the most because that's really what I can remember, to be honest. Because a lot of my 20s up into the 30s was a straight fog. Um, I don't
So you
remember very
used
much.
drugs from the age of 22 until your early 30s.
Yeah,
So for about a decade, you and so how many did you have more children after that or
I
uh
did. So I had, that's what I was going to talk about too, is like, so during that period of time, I have three boys now.
okay.
Thank God that they were protected because I wasn't able to have a full term without using drugs or alcohol. And that's something that shames me a little bit, and I'm still working on that. But I had my sons, Chris, Samuel, and Elijah. Um,
Hmm.
one is 15, one is 8, and one is 6. And so I'm coming up on 5 years sober. So I was still using at my last baby. Um,
Hmm. Hmm.
but where it all came to a head was one day I had been drinking, and the last part of my journey, it was mainly alcohol. Um,
Hmm.
I'd already been sober once from it was the drug of choice that I was using at that time was crack cocaine.
Hmm.
I was a crack addict, and so some situations happened, some domestic violence happened, and so my ex-husband had to go away and serve his time for doing some things that he did under the influence. And so during that time, I had freedom because I wasn't being controlled by a man. I wasn't being
Right.
told what to do. And so I went buck wild and I started drinking and, trying to soothe the fact that I was abandoned with three kids.
Mm.
It was just so much. And then my last one that I had, I believe that I had postpartum depression and they weren't able to pinpoint that. And so I just went crazy. I was working, drinking, driving back and forth. And so I got in an accident one day. Um,
Mhm.
The accident was not my fault, but because I smelled like alcohol, it was
Right.
automatically termed to my fault.
Right.
And so I was sentenced to 10 days in jail, and then I
Wow.
was put on probation. And that was the turning point of my life
Hmm.
because everything else didn't matter until the judge told me that if I didn't get sober, I would go to jail for 1 year
Wow.
and I would miss, and the only thing I could think of is I was going to miss out on my kid's life.
Right. Right.
And I, and before that, I got that sentence while I was in jail. I remember hearing that the 10 days that I was in jail, I remember hearing God's specific message to me. And He told me,
Hmm.
He said, "You're in here. Now you're safe." And He said, "Your kids are safe and they will be just fine without you. You need them more than
Right.
they need you."
Wow.
And I was like, I do, because that's all I could think of. They were all I had. And so
Right.
when I got out, I didn't get sober right away because it's really hard to get sober. Um, but that's when God started turning things around for me. I could see, if I look back then, I could start seeing where the shift was.
Right.
Um, I reconnected with a lady that was from my church, and
Right.
she had followed my journey since I was pregnant with my oldest one,
Right.
and she took my kids in. She
Hmm.
had temporary custody of them while I was trying to get sober.
Hmm. Well, before we, I don't want to interrupt, just such a dynamic story. And I just want to say congratulations on being 5 years sober. That is so awesome that, you're steady pressing forward in this journey. So we don't want to miss out on those nuggets of victory that you've had during this time, even though, God has just really, like you said, sometimes, in order for us to realize what we need to do in our lives, He has to stop us, right? He has to grab a hold of us and arrest us in our moments where we're just, like you said, spinning out of control, and He will interrupt what we're doing in order to save us. And that's how much He loves us so much. But I wanted to, just before you get into your story of, how you connected with a lady from church. I know when I spoke to you prior, you mentioned something about, you married this particular man, and I know you didn't really mention it before, because you felt like, you married this man because you felt like it would make you a better person. And sometimes, we misconstrue certain things, believe in one way, but then it turns out to be something else. Can you talk to us about that? Because, just let us know a little bit. You don't have to tell any names or anything like that, but just kind of give us that background as well.
But yes, so when my oldest one was like 3, I decided that, we were either going to get married or move apart and move out of the house together. And so,
Hmm.
but when I first met him in Maine, I thought we grew up together. We've known each other since we were 6 years old.
Hmm.
Um, I thought that if I was seen with him and if I was with him, since he was white, just being honest about it,
Hmm.
that maybe I could, that maybe that somebody could see me, you know?
Hmm.
And so he was the boy, in Maine that was kind of like everybody knew. Um,
Hmm.
and so I thought, maybe I can be just as important. Excuse me one moment, please.
No problem.
I'm sorry.
No
Um,
problem.
I thought that if I was seen with him, that I would have he would be important. I would be
Right.
important. I would be seen, and maybe I wouldn't feel as small as I did. Um,
Right.
but that was definitely not the case.
Right.
Things just seemed to get worse. Um,
And do you felt like that, had a more of an impact on your self-esteem, or maybe the journey that you led? Because it's like, okay, I'm connecting with this person based on who I believe I will be connected with him, because he's a white man. If I marry this person, that he might be, somebody that can rescue me out of this situation. But it ended up being the total opposite. So I'm sure that just, like, did that play an impact in your abuse or of your self-destruction at that moment, or?
It did because, like I said, I was raised a Jehovah's Witness, so I wasn't really exposed to anything. But
Mhm.
when I met people that was around him and things like that, that exposed me to a lot of things, and that's where I started tapping with drugs and alcohol, something I never ever ever had access to,
Right.
um, and it just, if I
Like you were
think about
saying,
it,
you were wide open, like you said, you were vulnerable, exposed to things that you've never experienced before. So it's like, wow, and you're believing that this is a good person. So you're like, okay, maybe it's not that bad.
yeah, that's really how I kept telling myself, maybe it's not that bad. It's going to turn around. Oh, he didn't mean to do that to me. Didn't mean to do that. He was just, upset. I made him upset. It's my fault.
Hmm.
Um, and what I've learned now from the past is that we connect with people that are like what we've grown up in. And I didn't realize that until a few years ago. But yeah, I would make excuses for things in the relationship, and I'm not saying that I was completely at fault, not at fault, because I'm sure I know that there's some things that I contributed to, but
Right.
specifically when it came to going down a road of drugs and alcohol, I chose to use, yes, I
Hmm.
did, but I
Yes.
was exposed
Right.
to it in a way where I was supposed to be safe.
Right. I mean, you trusted this person. This is someone that you left your family to be with. You followed him, trusting him that he would protect you, he would have your back. And a lot of times, the thing that we think is how it's gonna be, it doesn't turn out that way. So now you're in this place, with his family. You're away from your family. You're pregnant. You're exposed to all of these different things. And so now let's go back to, you said you reconnected with someone from church. How did you meet this lady, prior to you reconnecting with her?
So I met her probably the second week that I was in Virginia.
Okay.
Um, I decided to go to a Baptist church because I knew and always had a relationship with God. There was
Mhm.
never a doubt. I never doubted that He was there. The only thing that I did not do is I did not trust Him.
Mhm.
I
Wow.
did not trust that He would carry me through things. But I
Right.
always connected with God. And so I met her at it was called the Manassas Baptist Church, and
Mhm.
I remember seeing her, and I just thought that she played the piano, and she was just beautiful. There's something about her, and it turns out that she really does remind me of my mother,
Mhm.
just a stronger version of my mother.
Right.
Um, but I
So you
reconnected
connected
with
with someone that reminds you of family, like, so it's like, okay, she reminds me of my mom, someone that maybe I can trust, and she'll cover me and protect me. So that's awesome.
yes, she's the first person. She's the only person in Virginia that fought for me.
Mhm.
There was a time that I had gotten myself in trouble because I was being abused, and so I was trying to defend myself.
Mhm.
And of course, when a weapon is, I stabbed my husband. That's what I did because I was being attacked, and that's all I knew what to do. And so I got a charge of assault,
Mhm.
which is still on my record. But after the court was over, he admitted to Karen, that's her name. She says it's okay to use her name. That he lied and he set me
Mhm.
up. And so those are the things I was dealing with. And from that day on, she stayed in my life a little closer than she
Mhm.
had in the past. And so 5 years ago, I believe it's 6 years ago, we reconnected again.
Mhm.
We
Mhm.
never lost contact, but I never let her in completely.
Right.
And so one day I was really sick and it was a cold, but I had not been taking care of my body because I was
Right.
drinking and whatever.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
I called her and I said, I need help. Can you help me? And she came over. She said, that I know that that you're down because you never asked for help. And
Right.
that's when she took over taking my children from me. And for a while I didn't, I let her take care of them so I didn't have to be responsible for them. But
Right.
then slowly I started coming around. Like I said, I went to jail. It was July 1st through the 4th, through the 10th. I'll never forget that. I was
Mhm.
like, and
Wow.
she came up there to visit me.
Mhm.
And so I
So
was so
did you
used.
reconnect with her prior to you going to jail, or was it after? So it was prior to you, like you reached out to her and said, you know what? And she took your children. So when you went to jail, she had your children and everything like that.
Yes,
Hmm.
yes.
Okay.
And and like I said, God gives you what you need. And I needed a mom. That's what I needed.
Hmm.
And she fought for me. She showed me what love was. She showed up at the jail. She said, I told my children I'd never come visit them at jail and they better not be in here. She said, I'm here because I love you.
Right. That's awesome. So
She,
how God will connect you with someone in your greatest time of need. He always sends someone, an angel or, a spiritual mother, someone to be there for us. So God was able to provide, bring Karen into your life at the pinnacle moment that you really needed someone. So after you got out of jail, was that the turning point for you after that accident? Was that the turning point for you, or?
no, that wasn't the turning point because I had gotten myself in another accident, except for I wasn't driving.
Hmm.
But I was hanging out with somebody who was drinking the same amount as I was drinking, but I somehow had this convoluted idea that he would be a better driver than I was. And
Hmm.
I remember that day was the turning point because we were driving and I was sitting in the passenger side. I did not have my seatbelt on, and I heard, put your seatbelt on.
Hmm.
And I put it on, and not 1 minute after it clicked, we hit a tree.
Wow. So
And I knew that if I didn't put my seatbelt on, I would have went through the car.
yeah.
And that was a turning point because I sat there again. And I was like, my children, like
Mhm.
somebody would have to tell them what happened to their mother.
Right.
And so I came to Karen and I said, I need help. I don't know how to get sober. I need help.
Mhm.
And she said, "Well, we'll be moving to Baltimore in August, and the kids are
Mhm.
coming with me, and so are you." And I was like, "I'm not moving to Baltimore." And she's like, "Well, if you want to get sober, you're coming because the kids
Right.
are coming with me," is what she
Right.
said. And I
Mhm.
was like, "Well, I don't want to live without my kids." And
Right.
so I came to Baltimore.
So did she have custody of your children, or you just like really just trusted her to make
I
sure that
trusted her.
she?
We had an agreement that we notarized because we wanted to make sure that they were safe,
Okay.
because I wasn't making the right choices, and I knew
Mhm.
that.
Right. So she pretty much gave you an ultimatum, like, look, if you want to be sober, you've been in Christ, and it's God speaking through you, speaking to you throughout all this time, right? You're in the jail cell. He's speaking to you about your children. You're in this car accident. He's covering you and protecting you through this journey. So, you're realizing, and somebody's there for you. Karen is there for you, taking care of your children. So God has just been really kind of covering you and going before you this whole way. So she gives you this ultimatum to go to Baltimore. So obviously you said yes because you're like, I'm not going to lose my children. So what happened once you got to Baltimore? What happened there?
Well, so the first month I was not sober. We moved here 2 days shy of my 32nd or 33rd birthday. I can't remember. 33rd birthday.
Hmm.
32nd, I'm sorry. Um, and I was still drinking,
Hmm.
still being disrespectful in her house, but she didn't like, she knew I was going to get to a point where I could not do it. I had a court date coming on the 23rd of September, and I drank all the way up till then. And
Wow.
when I came, they sentenced me to that 1 year that I told you when I was coming on my way back, and I had to call every night. I was put on color code probation. Mind you, I
Mm.
live in I live in Maryland, and if they called my color, I had to get on the train at 4 o'clock in the morning and ride to Virginia to see them, or else I was going to get locked up.
Wow. So
So
they
I
made they were get putting you through it. So it's like if you want to stay out of jail, this is what you're going to have to do.
yes, yes.
So
I even thought about ways how I could get around it, and I was like, it was too much. It's too
he
much
was
work.
like, "Look, I want to stay out of jail, so I'm gonna do what I have to do."
Yeah.
So you said when you were on probation, so they will call you, and if they say come in, you just have to get up out of your bed and just go wherever you had to report to.
Yeah, I would have to call the night before, and I would know that I have to be down at Penn Station at 4 o'clock in the morning to get down to Manassas, Virginia, until I got
Wow.
all my stuff transferred over here. And I believe that those things happen absolutely for a reason, because
Right.
that was the start of clearing my mind of all that poison I was putting in my body.
Mhm.
Um, because the 23rd was the last day that I took a drink. But I had drank so much that day that I
Mhm.
couldn't claim a sobriety date until the 25th.
Wow. So was this like a situation where you were like, I'm gonna get all this out of my system. I'm gonna just drink, drink,
You
drink,
know
drink,
it.
drink. I'm gonna get this all out of my system. I'm gonna enjoy it while I can. And
Yep.
so after that, so were you still married at this time, or where was your husband at this time?
He was still locked up because at that time he had gotten
Mhm.
3 years for assault against a police officer and
Mhm.
assault against me.
Mhm.
And so he was still locked up. He was really angry that I moved here. He was
Mhm.
absolutely angry. And he told me that I had ended our marriage because I moved here,
Mm.
which I knew for sure that was not the case. But I had to get here to get sober. If not, I would be dead.
Right.
Absolutely be dead. Um, so I was still talking to him on the phone, putting money on the phone for him, sending money to him while he was in prison.
So let's just stop right there. So this is the man that brought you to from Maine to Virginia. You got addicted to drugs. He's assaulted you. You've gone through all of this heartache and pain and hell, pretty much, and you're still putting money on his books. You're still accepting his phone calls. Why?
Because I thought that I was supposed to do it because I felt deep down that I he was locked up because of me.
Mm.
I still was claiming responsibility for that, and so I felt like it was my obligation to take care of him.
So even though he didn't take care of you, and that's why he was there because he was putting his hands on you, you still felt like an obligation to him. So did he ever apologize or did he ever admit wrongdoing towards you?
Um, I got a somewhat of an apology, but not a full apology,
Hmm.
because it's still. I think now he's growing, but like it's still he still puts it as it's my fault that I we were in the situation that we were in.
Hmm. Hmm. So, I mean, have you come to grips with that particular part of the relationship, or are you still blaming yourself, or are you still feeling obligated?
No,
Okay, good.
no. But I had to
So,
go to therapy for that.
right, right. So there's a journey for that. So, so now let's go back. You're in Maryland. You're on
Mhm.
probation. You're accepting his phone calls. So how is that impacting your journey? You're still communicating with this person who's kind of put who has set your life down this course. Who has helped you set your life down this course. So what are you going through right now? What is going on in your life right now with you and your children?
At that time, it was really hard because like I had this image of being married, and if you marry somebody, you're supposed to stick with them through thick and thin, no matter what, because that's how I was raised.
Right.
And to get a divorce would be to shame your family and to shame yourself. So I was trying to
Hmm.
like
Work
work
it
through
out.
it. I was trying
Hmm.
to work through it, but he was still verbally abusing me over the phone. Um, but I was able to. I had the only power I had was to hang up,
Right.
but then I would pick up the phone and give him the power back.
Right.
Um, so it was a constant. The last 8 months of it was just a ridiculous, the constant back and forth show of just ridiculousness.
Hmm.
I was not available for my kids yet. I was there in body and
Hmm.
somewhat emotionally, but I wasn't fully there yet. I was going to therapy twice a week,
Right.
um, alcohol counseling, but it was therapy. I was doing that twice a week, and so I wasn't
Right.
available for them either.
Right.
Um,
So
so I
how
had a
did this
teenager.
That's what I was gonna say. How did this impact them? Like, your son is now a teenager. He's watching his mother being verbally abused by dad. How are they handling all this, and what is their relationship like with their father?
So my oldest one's relationship is a little bit different than my younger one's relationship because they didn't see anything.
Okay.
My oldest one saw everything. In fact, there's a lot of times that he had to protect me.
Mm.
And a lot of times, one of the last time is when he called the police, and that's why he got locked up.
Okay.
And so I feel a lot of shame and guilt for that, that we're working through that as well. But at that time, my oldest one was acting out. He was doing a whole bunch in school. He was basically a big boy, but a baby inside because I
Right.
hadn't given him what he needed. And he had to be the other parent taking care of his other brothers for
Hmm.
the longest time. So the first 2 years were rough.
Right.
Um, he was doing great on his grades, fine, but like the behavior issues in school was just off the chain. Um, and so his relationship with, I believe, with his dad is more of what can I get from you now?
Mm.
It's
Hmm.
not a
A
good,
father-son
healthy,
loving relationship.
not yet. And I pray that they work it out. And
Right.
but no, they don't have a good relationship at all. The younger two were having some issues, if I'm being honest, because my youngest one believes that he's not loved because he's darker than his other brother. So that's a whole different story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's a whole nother conversation. And how do you talk to him about that? How do you address this hurt inside of him in regard to, I was just talking to Elena earlier about colorism. And I know, and that's why I wanted you to address what you told me earlier about marrying this man, a white man, to make you feel like, okay, he can rescue me, he can take me out of this situation. You have this perception of what possibly can happen if you marry this person.
Mhm.
So, and according to your story, it wasn't what you thought it was going to be. The grass wasn't really greener on the other side of this situation. So, how do you talk to your youngest son, who is a little bit darker than his siblings, about him not feeling love? Where do you think he got that from?
Um, I'm not sure exactly where it came from. I can't say what happens when I'm not around.
Sure.
So I don't know if it's things he's heard, if he's seen, but there are some situations where they've seen their mother being verbally, racially abused. And there's been situations where they have said to their father, "Oh, so we don't like black people." And I had to explain to my children that, hey, mom is black too, and so are you. So that's not true. But
Right.
they're hearing something different. So it's been a long journey. It was definitely not what I expected. I did not really think
Right. And who
any
and
of this do.
right, and who does expect what, we don't marry people expecting it's going to go downhill. We don't marry people expecting that they're going to introduce us to things or abuse us and things like that. Like you said, you wanted to be married for life. You wanted to support your husband. And so I know you mentioned that you talk to your children like, hey, mom is black too. You guys are black. So when you said that to them, what was their response?
Well, my youngest one is all he's like, yeah, I'm black.
Hmm.
And so he my youngest one is the only one that has the emotional security that a child needs, because he got the love from Karen and the family here that he needed at the age that he needed it. So he's pretty confident in himself. Like he'll say those things, but then he'll keep it moving.
Right.
It's the two oldest ones that I have issues with. Not there, I don't have issues with that have
Yeah.
issues with their father. My oldest one is coming out of it now because he's finding himself finally at 15. He's coming out. He's happier now. But my middle one is the lightest of all my children, but his hair is like my hair. So
Mm.
he's in between
He's trying to figure it out.
he's trying to figure it out because now that their father is remarried, and his wife is white just like him, and so they have a son that is her son, their stepbrother, is also white, and so I think sometimes they feel like he gets to stay because I just don't know how kids think, if you know what I mean. And so they go down there and they spend time and they come back and there's just always something.
Right. And that's something that, again, you have to work through as you're working through your own sobriety. You're working to help them to kind of come through a sobriety of coming to who they are as young men and
Yeah.
who and helping to find them. Are they receiving any type of counseling or anything like that?
Well, my two oldest ones go to counseling. My youngest is just spoiled right now. So um, the two oldest ones definitely go to counseling only once a week, and they're definitely coming out of that. At least my oldest one is coming out of that anger. That was something I was going to share too,
Okay.
where about a year ago, me and my oldest son had a sit down. He was crying. I don't. He was going through something emotional at the time, and I didn't know where his mind was. So I went into his room and I said, I don't know what's going on, but I love you. He said, I just don't understand why you and dad didn't choose me and you chose drugs and alcohol for me.
Gia, you were breaking up, so I didn't hear you. You said your oldest son said, I don't know why you and dad did what?
Didn't choose me.
Oh, okay. Hmm.
And so he said because he was there when he saw us using and
Hmm.
drinking and things like that. And I had to sit down
Right.
with him and I had to tell him, you're right. You're right, son.
Hmm.
I didn't choose you, but I'm choosing you now. I'm
Hmm.
choosing you because I know how to choose you. And
Right.
so we're working through that. And I think that's the biggest relationship issue that us a lot of us recovering addicts have with our children
Right.
is that we don't apologize.
Mm. Right. Right. And I think that's awesome that you were able to admit it and be honest and say, you know what? No, honey, I did not choose you, but I'm choosing you now. I think that's a great first step in healing a relationship, healing the brokenness and the hurt that he may be experiencing because of what he saw and those things that he experienced. Um, so, going back to your sobriety and talking about your sobriety, I know you said you've been sober for 5 years,
Almost 5 years, yeah.
almost 5 years.
Hmm.
So, how do you maintain your sobriety? What are you doing that to help you maintain your sobriety at this stage?
So I believe in the early part of my recovery, went to a lot of meetings. I built I built a solid foundation with the people that were inside the foundations of AA. I had many sponsors, and I also learned who I was in AA.
Mm-hmm.
My faith is based in Jesus Christ because that's my higher power.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I finally understood that I don't have to believe I don't have to believe in the God that you believe in. I believe in the God of my understanding.
Right.
And that's when it made sense to me. It's like we all have God in the way that we need him to be. Of course, he's, our savior, but he came to me in the form of where I needed it the most.
Mm-hmm.
And so through AA, I've learned that there are things that I can't control.
Right.
I couldn't control how my significant other's attitude was, but I could control me walking away.
Right.
And those are the things I've learned how to do in AA. I also work with other recovering addicts themselves, and I also go to places like human, helping out humanity, and I volunteer because that's part of my recovery is giving back.
Right. And that's awesome because that's how we are, that's also, while we're broken and hurting, God will use us in our broken place to help
Yes.
others to heal. Our story is a testimony for others. So Bougie Girl Cyber Happy Hour audience, I just want you to know if you're just now joining us, that we're speaking to Gia. She is sharing her amazing story about recovery and victory over addictions and just being transparent with us on tonight. So hopefully if you're able to tune in, share this with someone who may be struggling with addiction or who has a story of
Yes.
addictions because she is very inspiring right now and just being able to share her story and how to come out of it. She had her turning point where she was in an accident, a second car accident where God just really saved her life, and she didn't want to lose her children. So it's like, you know what, I have a choice to make. And I just, a lot of times and when we are in those broken places, many times our children are our saviors. Our children, Jesus Christ is our savior, but our children, we kind of look at them like, you know what, I want to do this for them. I want them to see me come out on top. I want them to know that you can do this. You can be better. And, you don't have to allow a bad moment or a bad decision to destroy your life. That's not who you are. You are Gia. You're not what you've been through. And so it's just awesome to hear your story. So I know you were saying that you've been to AA and different things like that. So what else has helped you along the way with your story of victory and recovery?
Just for the most part, for me, it's just finding out who I was. A
Hmm.
lot of the times, also, I didn't mention before, but when I was in Maine, there was a lot of things that I missed as a child.
Hmm.
Being up there, my parents pulled me out of school at the fourth grade, and so I didn't have a school education, and so that made me feel like I was not good enough anyway.
Wow.
And so when I moved to Baltimore, I decided to go to college and try to get a degree
Hmm.
in humanities and social science. And it was the biggest struggle that I have ever experienced in my
Hmm.
life besides sobriety.
Right. Right.
But the day that I graduated and I saw my kids,
That's so awesome. What a blessing.
that's what I wanted them to see.
Yeah. And I think that's what your story is all about, just letting the world see, what, despite of how it started, it doesn't have to end this way.
No, it
It
doesn't.
doesn't have to end this way. And so when you said your parents pulled you out of school in fourth grade, you never went back to high school or middle school or anything. Wow. So were you
No,
homeschooled or anything like that or?
supposedly.
Mm-hmm.
And so I didn't, it was a struggle to get my GED. I came 1 point from almost not getting it.
Wow. I mean, wow, that was close. I know you were like, oh my goodness, again, God is just
Yeah,
really showing up on your behalf.
it
So
always
you got
has.
your GED, your GED, excuse me, and you're going back to school. So are you, and I think you told me you have your bachelor's degree now, or you're pursuing your bachelor's degree at this point?
I'm pursuing a bachelor's and master's. I do have my associates. Yes, I graduated last year.
That's awesome. Congratulations. So you're just, I mean, just showing that there's hope and there's victory and there's just like success and regardless of what you've gone through. So share with our audience, give them some suggestions if they're battling with addictions or anything like that, what you've gone through and your victory. What can you share with our audience to help them to overcome and just to get on the right track?
The biggest thing that's helped me is the surrender, is like learning to surrender that you don't have control over this and that whether it's drugs, whether it's alcohol, whether it's eating, whether it's pornography, whatever addiction,
Mhm.
whatever you're using to mask having to feel what hurts, it's an addiction.
Right.
Um, because I mean, it comes in many forms, but for me, it's the surrender and just giving it to God. If you have to give it to God a million times a day, give it to God. I'm the type of person that sometimes I pick it back up, but you got to give
Mhm.
it back to God because you cannot handle it.
Right.
I remember there was one thing that my brother told me a long time ago, and I never forgot it. He
Mhm.
said, if you do your possible, I promise that God will do the impossible. And that's all you have to do is everything that you have in your power to do, and He'll give you the strength to do the rest. If it means going to meetings, when when I first got into recovery, I couldn't drive. I
Right.
couldn't drive for 2 years. For
Wow.
2 years, I couldn't drive, but I made it to my meetings.
Right. So it sounds like what you're saying is you have to make a sacrifice. You have to pretty much do what you have to do. And it also sounds like you're saying, so try to connect with someone because you had Karen and you had the church. You've always had that. God has always been a part of your life since you were a young girl. And so
Yes.
you went back to God. And I think that's a lot of times, for someone who may have never had God in their lives before, who may have never been to church or, I think it's a good decision to possibly connect with someone that will help you get back on track. Like you said, the AA meetings and different things like that, doing things for yourself, getting your education, going back to school and helping others while you're going through your own sobriety, you were also helping other people.
Yeah. And it's about also learn. So another program that's helped me, it's called Celebrate Recovery. And that's an AA, all around addiction Christian recovery group. And for
Mhm.
me, I had to do a lot of those things first coming into AA because I didn't love myself. Obviously, I would not have stayed in a relationship like that if I loved
Right.
myself. So I had to learn how to love myself. Codependency is an addiction as well.
Hmm.
Um, is the only thing I keep hearing on my heart to say is I don't know who is listening or who will listen to this later on, but like if you are in an abusive relationship, no matter what type of abuse it is,
Hmm.
you need to leave. You just need to leave. Whoever it is that's listening, you need to leave because it's only going to get worse.
Right.
Um, and you have to trust that God's going to carry you through this.
Right.
Because today there's a lot of things here in Maryland, and I realized why God brought me here. There's a
Hmm.
lot of programs here that are meant to help single moms,
Hmm.
single parents. It's there. You just have to take it.
Right.
You have to use it, and you have to use it the way that God wants you to use it. He has it all there for you. You just have to surrender. That's the only thing I can really keep saying is surrender.
Right, surrendering and if for those who live in different states, call 211, go to your local church. There are different programs. Look online. We all have cell phones, and if you don't have a cell phone at the time, call 211. Go to your local church. Go somewhere to a hospital. They
Mhm.
also can provide you resources or somewhere to go. Will lead you down the right path, connect you with the right person in order to help you. I know a lot of places have homes for women, if the shelters are full or whatever, homes for women where they can start over and get back on track. They have the supports there. So, like she said, if you're being abused right now, or if you're in an abusive situation, leave the situation and get the help that you need. And there are places out there that will help you.
Yeah.
So, do you talk to your family right now? Are you in connection with your mom, your biological parents?
No.
Okay.
I haven't seen them since I left Maine.
Hmm. And
And
how are you dealing with that? I mean, have you had closure with that, or you're still hoping for a restoration in that area?
so before I felt really torn about it. I really wanted to have that relationship with my family. I felt like that I didn't deserve that life, but
Hmm.
I believe that somewhere between then and now, I found some closure that I didn't realize was coming because what I learned is that I have a family that wants me. I have a family that wants to take care of me. My kids get to call Karen Nana. They get to have a pop pop, you know. I get to have my own family, and that's enough. That's
Right,
God gave that to me. I don't need to be around people that don't want me to be around or
right,
want me around on circumstances. It's conditional. It's
right.
funny that you said that because I was telling Elena earlier today that today is my dad's birthday.
Oh, wow. Hmm.
Yeah, my real dad.
Yeah,
And the only thing I can do is wish you well. You know,
right.
and that's something I couldn't do a couple years ago.
And that's awesome. And that shows a lot about your maturity and your growth. Like you said, to wish him well right now and not wish any type of bad feelings or ill will towards him. And I know you were saying, and a lot of times God will bring us family who are not even our blood. Family is not always blood because, sometimes we have to distance ourselves from blood
Toxic.
family because those are the ones that sometimes bring us the most heartache and pain. And for
Yes.
you to find family. So tell us about your life now. So, I mean, you share some great things. You're in school, you're almost 5 years sober, you have a family. What else is going on with Gia?
So, I am almost done school. I have one more year left, and
Yay.
I've been doing a few things that God has called me to do. I've been working on a book that He's been asking me to, self-help book. I just launched my first blog 2 days
Yay.
ago. So I'm super
Okay.
excited.
And what's the name of it?
It's called "Girl, Pull Up Your Chair."
Okay.
Yeah, it's just basically talking about what we're talking about today, and reaching out to help women and opening men's eyes to certain things that women are going through and what it means to be a single parent, to be honest.
That's awesome. I mean, using your testimony and your story to help others. And you know what? That's basically what it's all about. When God gives us victory and
Yes,
healing, we're not to sit on that. We're not to hold on to it and covet that. We are to share it with the world. We are to use our healing to help others to heal as well so they won't go back into that. So your blog is called Girl Pull Up Your Chair. That's an awesome title. I love
I'm
it.
sorry, it's "Girl, Pull Up a Chair." I'm sorry,
Pull
that's
up
what it
a
was.
chair. Okay. Girl, pull up a chair. So, such an
Yes.
awesome title. So, is that on here on Facebook or where can they find you?
If you type in girlpullupachair.com, it'll come up.
On Facebook?
No, just on the regular website.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. So that's
Yeah.
such a beautiful thing for you to share your story. So is there any last minute things that you want to share with our audience to help them to get through whatever they may be going through in regard to addiction and just their lives in general? Do you have anything would you like to share with us?
I just a couple of things, well, two things. First
Mhm.
of all, you just need to surrender, like I said earlier, and get some
Mhm.
help because the only reason that I'm here is because God is allowing me to tell this story. And the
Right.
only reason that I can tell this story is because I surrendered.
Right.
It's not my story to tell,
Mhm.
it's God's story to tell. And
Mhm.
that's what He wants to do with each one of you. He wants to save as many people as He can. There's a lot of people that are not coming out of addiction and the hurt that they've experienced. And I understand that of all people. There's a lot of things that I've been through as a child, a victim of rape, incest. I've been through a lot. God will carry you if you trust Him.
Mhm.
There's no drug, there's nothing that's going to take that away. The only person that can do that is God.
Amen. That is so true. There's nothing too hard for him. There's nothing impossible for him. Anything that we've experienced or gone through, God can bring us out. He can pull us through. And you are a testament of that, Gia. And we are so honored and humbled So grateful for you to be on this platform to share your story with us. And just to kind of end on a lighter note, you shared some awesome information, and we're just so excited for you in your future. Hopefully we can talk to you again once you graduate, and maybe we can be on your blog, and you can, we
Of
can
course.
talk to you on your blog.
Yes.
So, what makes you a bougie girl? Because bougie stands for, our platform was created to help encourage women, to help women to grow and to flourish, and just provide them with resources to, like her story, which is what we're doing right now, to share stories of victory and overcoming with other women and just share their stories with the world. So we're so excited for you to share your story of victory with addiction. So Bougie stands for bold, one of a kind, unbothered by people's opinion of us, God's girl, intentional and elegant. So what makes you a bougie girl?
For me, it's because I believe that God chose me. Um,
Mhm.
I am, all I can hear, oh my gosh, that God has me here to break the stereotypes
Mhm.
of being a single mom with kids, an
Mhm.
addict. That's why I feel like I'm his daughter.
Yeah,
He
you're
has
God's
protected
girl.
me. He has
Mhm.
protected me. He is my husband. He clothes me. That's it.
Amen. So
I
I
wouldn't be
mean,
staying here without him. I would not.
right. Would none of us be here without him? He is so amazing. He is so awesome. He never fails us. He is always there. He'll never leave us nor forsake us. And, he makes our crooked path straight. He has
Yes,
gone before you when he protected you in those car accidents and covered you and spoke to you and just led you to the right people. So we know God is real. And for those
absolutely.
out there who don't know him, get to know God. Connect with a church, your local church, a Bible based church. You can always watch church on social media right now. There's so many amazing
Yes,
churches out here on social media. I attend Unity Church of Dallas. And what church do
yes.
you attend?
I do the mixed church. That's me and Lena. We do that one. And they do live 2 services on Sunday.
Yeah, so the Mixed Church in Baltimore, and
Yes.
I'm Unity Church of Dallas with Pastor Deatrice D. Lewis. So if you all need a church, we just mentioned two amazing churches that you can attend: the
Hmm.
Mix in Baltimore and Unity Church Dallas in the DFW area with Pastor Deatrice Lewis. So there's two amazing churches. So if you don't have a church home, please check one of those out,
Please.
so you can get some word, you can get some encouragement to build yourself up to let so God know, so you can get to know God, so you can get to know him because he loves you. He wants you to be alive. He wants you to survive what you're going through. So Gia, thank you so much for joining us on tonight and sharing your story. You
Thank
guys
you for
go
having
check
me.
out her blog, Girl Pull Up a Chair. Love that title. It's so awesome. So anyway, thank you for joining us tonight on Bougie Girl Cyber Happy Hour. We will be back on Monday. We're going to talk to a esthetician. She's going to tell us about skincare and different things like that. So thank you everyone for joining and watching the replay. Please share it out with someone who is overcoming addictions and who is dealing with addictions. We love you all. You all are amazing. You all are bougie girls, bougie guys, if there's some guys on here. We love you guys. Have a great weekend and happy Father's Day because
Yes.
Father's Day is Sunday.
Yes.
So we
Happy
want to
Father's Day.
celebrate all the amazing men, the father figures, the spiritual fathers that we've had in our lives, our pastors, our brothers, our uncles. We've had some amazing men in our lives. So happy Father's Day to all the great fathers out there. So have a great weekend. Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Bye bye.
We love you guys.